Before the Fellowship would create a story you've never heard. I'm Dan.
I'm Greg.
I'm Cameron.
Join us as we read and react to the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. Last time we concluded chapter 23. Eärendil was born to Tuor and Eärendil. Having destroyed the other great elf kingdoms, Morgoth sets his will on Gondolin. Maglor wandered beyond the encircling mountains and was captured by orcs and taken to Angband. He revealed the location of Gondolin to Morgoth. On the day of a great feast, Morgoth attacked. Ecthelion duelled Gothmog, and both died in combat. Turgon's people valiantly defended the Tower of Turgon. He ultimately was killed in the fighting. Tuor searched for Eärendil and cast Maglor from the walls to his death. Eärendil led a remnant of the people through a hidden pass to escape, but they were ambushed by orcs. Glorfindel battled a Balrog, and they both fell into the abyss. Thorondor rescued his remnant from the attacking orcs. Eventually, they were joined to the company of Elwing, Dior's daughter. Eärendil Gil-galad, son of Fingolfin, became High King of the Noldor. Ulmo went to Valinor, asking Manwë for the Valar to assist the elves, but he was unmoved. In their old age, Tuor and Eärendil sailed into the west. Tuor's fate was sundered from that of men. Today, we begin chapter 24 of the Quenta Silmarillion, which is found on page 246 of the second edition. Chapter 24 of the Voyage of Eärendil and the War of Wrath. Bright Eärendil was the lord of the people that dwelt nigh to Sirion's mouths. He took to wife Elwing the Fair, and she bore to him Elrond and Elros, who were called the half-elven. Yet Eärendil could not rest, and his voyages about the shores of the hitherlands eased not his unquiet. Two purposes grew in his heart. Blended as one in longing for the wide sea, he sought to sail thereon, seeking after Tuor and Eärendil who returned not. And he thought to find perhaps the last shore, and bring ere he died the message of elves and men to the Valar in the west, that should move their hearts to pity for the sorrows of Middle-earth. Now Eärendil became fast in friendship with Círdan the shipwright, who dwelt on the Isle of Valar with those of his people who escaped from the sack of the havens of Brythombar and Elgarest. With the aid of Círdan, Eärendil built Vingiliot, the foam flower, fairest of the ships of song. Golden were its oars and white its timbers, hewn in the birch woods of Nimbrethil, and its sails were as the argent moon. In the lay of Eärendil is many a thing sung of his adventures in the deep and in lands untrodden, and in many seas and in many isles. But Elwing was not with him, and she sat in sorrow by the mouths of Sirion. Eärendil found not Tuor, nor Eärendil, nor came he ever on that journey to the shores of Valinor, defeated by shadows and enchantment, driven by repelling winds, until in longing for Elwing he turned homeward towards the coast of Beleriand. And his heart bade him haste, for a sudden fear had fallen on him out of dreams, and the winds that bore he had striven with might, not now bear him back as swift as his desire. Now when the first tidings came to Maedhros that Elwing yet lived, and dwelt in possession of the Silmaril by the mouths of Sirion, he, repenting of the deeds in Doriath, withheld his hand. But in time the knowledge of their oath unfulfilled returned to torment him, and his brothers, and gathering from their wanderings hunting paths, they sent messages to the havens of friendship, and yet of stern demand. Then Elwing and the people of Sirion would not yield the jewel which Beren had won and Lúthien had worn, and for which Dior the fair was slain, and least of all while Eärendil their lord was on the sea, for it seemed to them that Silmaril lay the healing and the blessing that came upon their houses and their ships. And so there came to pass the last and cruelest of the slayings of elf by elf. And that was the third of the great wrongs achieved by the accursed oath. For the sons of Fëanor that yet lived came down suddenly upon the exiles of Gondolin and the remnant of Doriath and destroyed them. In that battle some of their people stood aside, and some few rebelled and were slain upon the other part, aiding Elwing against their own lords. For such was the sorrow and confusion in the hearts of the Eldar in those days. But Maedhros and Maglor won the day, though they alone remained thereafter of the sons of Fëanor, for both Amrod and Amras were slain. Too late the ships of Círdan and Gil-galad, the High King, came hasting to the aid of the elves of Sirion, and Elwing was gone, and her sons. Then such few of that people as did not perish in the assault joined themselves to Gil-galad, and went with him to Valar, and they told that Elros and Elrond were taken captive, but Elwing, with the Silmaril upon her breast, had cast herself into the sea. Thus Maedhros and Maglor gained not the jewel, but it was not lost, for Olmo bore up Elwing out of the waves, and he gave her the likeness of a great white bird, and upon her breast there shone as a star the Silmaril, as she flew over the water to seek Eärendil, her beloved. On a time of night, Eärendil, at the helm of his ship, saw her come toward him, as a white cloud, exceeding swift beneath the moon, as a star over the sea moving in strange course, a pale flame on the wings of storm. And it is sung that she fell from the air upon the timbers of Vingilot, and in a swoon, nigh unto death for the urgency of her speed, and Eärendil took her to his bosom. But in the morning, with marvelling eyes, he beheld his wife in her own form beside him, with her hair upon his face, and she slept. Great was the sorrow of Eärendil and Elwing for the ruin of the havens of Sirion, and the captivity of their sons, and they feared that they would be slain. But it was not so, for Maglor took pity upon Elros and Elrond, and he cherished them. And love grew after between them, as little might be thought. But Maglor's heart was sick, and weary with burden of the dreadful oath. Yet Eärendil say now no hope left in the lands of Middle-earth, and he turned again in despair and came not home, but sought back once more to Valinor with Elwing at his side. He stood now most often at the prow of Vingilot, and the Silmaril was bound upon his brow, and ever its light grew greater as they drew into the west. And the wise have said that it was by reason of the power of that holy jewel that they came in time to waters that no vessels save those of the Teleri had known, and they came to the enchanted isles and escaped their enchantment, and they came into the shadowy seas and passed their shadows, and they looked upon Tol Esair, the lonely isle, but tarried not. And at last they cast anchor in the bay of Eldamar. And the Teleri saw the coming of that ship out of the east, and they were amazed, gazing from afar upon the light of the Silmaril, and it looked very great. Then Eärendil, first of living men, landed on the immortal shores, and he spoke there to Elwing and to those that were with him, and they were 3 mariners who sailed all the seas beside him. Falathar, Erelont, and Eärendil were their names. And Eärendil said to them, "Here none but myself shall set foot, lest you fall under the wrath of the Valar. But that peril I will take upon myself alone, for the sake of the 2 kindreds." But Elwing answered, "Then would our paths be sundered forever. But all thy perils I will take on myself also." And she leapt into the white foam and ran towards him. But Eärendil was sorrowful, for he feared the anger of the lords of the west upon any of Middle-earth that would dare pass the leaguer of Aman. And there they bade farewell to the companions of their voyage, and were taken from them forever. Then Eärendil said to Elwing, "Await me here, for one only may bring the message that is my fate to bear." And he went up alone into the land, and came into the Calakiria, and it seemed to him empty and silent, for even as Morgoth and Ungoliant came in ages past, so now Eärendil had come at a time of festival. And well nigh all the elven folk were gone to Valimar. All were there gathered in the halls of Manwë upon Taniquetil, and few were left to keep watch upon the walls of Sirion. But some there were who saw him from afar, and the great light that he bore, and they went in haste to Valimar. But Eärendil climbed the green hill of Tunar, and found it bare. And he entered into the streets of Sirion, and they were empty. And his heart was heavy, for he feared that some evil had come even to the blessed realm. He walked in the deserted ways of Sirion, and the dust upon his raiment and his shoes was a dust of diamonds, and he shone and glistened as he climbed the long white stairs. And he called aloud in many tongues, both of elves and men, but there were none to answer him. Therefore he turned back at last towards the sea. But even as he took the shoreward road, one stood upon the hill and called to him in a great voice, crying, "Hail, Eärendil, of mariners most renowned! The looked for that cometh at unawares, the longed for that cometh beyond hope. Hail, Eärendil, bearer of light before the sun and moon, splendor of the children of earth, star in the darkness, jewel in the sunset, radiant in the morning." That voice was the voice of Eonwe, herald of Manwë. And he came from Valimar and summoned Eärendil to come before the powers of Arda. And Eärendil went into Valinor and to the halls of Valimar, and never again set foot upon the lands of men. Then the Valar took counsel together, and they summoned Olmo from the deeps of the sea, and Eärendil stood before their faces and delivered the errand of the 2 kindreds. Pardon, he asked, for the Noldor, and pity for their great sorrows, and mercy upon men and elves, and succor in their need. And his prayer was granted. In summary, Eärendil, son of Tuor, son of Ur, and Idril, son of Turgon, or daughter of Turgon, rather, marries Elwing, daughter of Beren and Lúthien. They have 2 children, Elrond and Elros, the half-elven. 2 merging desires grow in Eärendil's heart, to find his parents across the sea and to reach Valinor and plead with the Valar for their intervention in the woes of elves and men. The remaining sons of Fëanor learn that Elwing possesses the Silmaril at the mouths of Sirion, an attack of the remnants of Gondolin and Doriath. Amrod and Amras were slain, leaving only Maedhros and Maglor. Elrond and Elros are taken captive, and Elwing casts herself into the sea with the Silmaril. Olmo transforms her into a great white bird, and she flies to meet Eärendil on his ship. With nothing to return to, they turn westward and reach Aman by the light of the Silmaril. Eärendil stands before the Valinor and pleads for mercy upon men and elves, and his prayer is granted. Thus concludes our reading.
The beginning of the end. This is the final chapter of the Silmarillion.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but I guess we'll have another reading. We'll do a Calibeth, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So who knew prior to this that Elrond is a mudblood? I didn't realize that.
What do you mean
What's the
mudblood?
mudblood? Is that from Star Wars?
Yeah. It's when you're half Sith and half Jedi.
Okay.
He's like so stately in the Lord of the Rings. He's like, the pretty much the highest drinking elf.
Well, we discussed it, I think, at the beginning of the...
Did I just forget that? That he's...
Yeah, because we looked at the charts.
I mean, I knew that. I knew that from the Silmarillion, but is that... I forget if that's clear in the Lord of the Rings that he's...
It's not clear.
I forgot it.
Well, I know why. I know why. Because more happens coming up, but... Because Elros, we don't really know about his brother. Elrond is a central figure in Lord of the Rings, but Elros is not. We'll find out why shortly.
Wait, Eärendil is an elf, right?
He too is...
It's a man, right?
He's half elf and half man.
Gotcha.
Oh, yeah, because we talked about him being able to be the one that actually brings reconciliation, because he had that sort of Christological...
So he's the son of Tuor, who's a man, and Idril, who's Turgon's daughter. So he's half man and half elf. So I guess Elrond and Elros are like, they're not really half elf, they're like 3/4 elf. Or wait, maybe that's not right. No, that's not true. They are half elf, but because Eärendil and Elwing are both half man and half elf, or half woman and half elf.
You know what? It really doesn't matter how privileged they are. I don't think it's important.
Oh dear. Well, yeah, I mean, Eärendil being half elven, of surpassing beauty, for a light was in his face as the light of heaven, and he had the beauty and wisdom of the Eldar, and the strength and hardihood of the men of old, and the sea ever spoke in his ear and heart, and even as with Tuor, his father. So he's particularly blessed. And it's like later on in that chapter, we discussed it last time, but just as a recap, they talked about when Olmo and came to the Valinor. It says the wise have said that the hour has not yet come, and that only one speaking in person for the cause of both elves and men, pleading for pardon on their misdeeds and pity on their woes, might move the councils of the powers, and the oath that Fëanor, perhaps even Manwë, could not loose until it is found in its end, and the sons of Fëanor relinquish the Silmarils. Now, it's interesting because
That's so cool.
Yeah, Eärendil, like, kind of, he embodies, in a way, the unification of the two, almost like at their perfection, because he's beautiful. He also has the wisdom of elves and the hardihood of men. So when he shows up with, maybe that played into his prayer being granted.
It's interesting because we hear that early on in the Silmarillion that the Silmarils kind of bind the fate of Arda or of Middle Earth. But we don't hear about the Silmarils too often. Sometimes, like some stories is talking about the war with Morgoth and what he's doing to the elves and to the men. But now we're finally hearing the Silmarils come back into importance. I thought that was interesting that the Silmarils kind of become this catalyst for Eärendil seeking redemption for elves and men.
I gotta be honest, I thought it was gonna be lost to the sea completely. Thought when she jumped in with it, I thought, okay, that's that gone then.
Yeah, which is interesting because when Tolkien copied Titanic, like I think he got that wrong because Rose kept the jewel, right?
I think
she
so.
didn't throw it in the sea. It was Jack,
and she didn't give it to her family who wanted it either. So.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember at the end they're like begging her? She's the old lady, and she drops it into the sea.
It's been 85 years.
I think there's an alternate ending where she does that in front of like all the crew of that like ship that she's on.
Oh, really?
Anyway.
Oh wait, that isn't from the main ending?
The main ending, she's just by herself and she drops it into the sea and nobody knows.
Oh,
but there's an alternate ending.
Okay, so I've seen the alternate ending, and that's what stuck with me. The actual proper ending doesn't resonate with me for some reason, but her being like, "Stick it to you guys suck. You're just after riches. It's gone." Cue the pan pipe.
Drop the Bitcoin into the sea.
No, don't do it.
Okay, speaking of the Silmaril, I think I finally come up with, in this reading, I came up with a good analogy for how to understand it. And I'm looking at the top.
Is it like the ring with Gollum?
No.
Oh,
stop.
Greg, are you? Hold on. Are you still coming through your earphone?
I might have got messed up when I took out my earbuds.
You sound like you're underwater. We're waiting for Greg because he's going to bring us back on track. I forgot what book we're reading.
I want somebody to go back in. Oh, that's better. That's it. Before you start, I want somebody to go back through all of our podcasts and count the amount of times we reference Titanic and Star Wars.
That's been a secret game I've been playing with myself, is dropping Titanic references as often as possible. So top of 247, it says, "It seemed to them that in the Silmaril lay the healing and the blessing that had come upon their houses and their ships." That's why Elwing wouldn't relinquish it to the sons of Fëanor. She perceived that in the Silmaril lay the healing and the blessing that had come upon their houses and their ships. So I think the Silmaril is analogous to a sacramental, where it doesn't, the thing in itself doesn't possess power, but it's like the prayers and the blessings associated with it that are like a avenue for grace. It's not like the actual,
it's like the hinge of a door
itself,
Yeah.
So it's because the way that it talks about it, the way that Tolkien talks about it, is he kind of goes back and forth between the power of it or the power imbued by it. But I think it's like, it's more so its root in the light of the trees and the power of the Valar, I guess you could say. And, all their, I mean, the source of their creation is kind of in the dying of the trees and the tears of Yavanna and all this stuff, right? So there's kind of like this hope and blessing poured into it through the Valar and through Fëanor's craft.
So like a sacrament has power in and of itself, but you're saying it's like a sacramental because
I
it
think
has
sometimes
power by
sometimes it's
association.
sacramental, sometimes it's sacrament.
I guess Cameron, that's exactly what I'm getting at. I think it's like, it's not efficacious in itself. It's there's like kind of a grace it's an avenue of grace for the people that possess it, except for Noldor, or the Noldor, except for Morgoth, who is like, opposed to the Valar, so it's like a curse to him.
Yeah. But as a rebuttal. I'm gonna debate you on this. I'm gonna say I think it's a sacrament, and later on 247, they're on their journey. Yet Eärendil saw no hope left in the lands of Middle Earth, and he turned again in despair and came not home, but sought back once more to Valinor with Elwing at his side. He stood now most often at the prow of Vingillot, that's the ship, and the Silmaril was bound upon his brow, and its light grew greater as they drew into the west. And the wise have said that it was by reason of the power of the holy jewel that they came into the waters that no vessels save those of the Teleri had known. And they came to the enchanted isles and escaped enchantment. And they came to the shadowy seas and passed through the shadows, and so on and so forth. So to me, it seems that there is inherent power in it, and it is more akin to a sacrament.
But
interesting. I would say that very bottom of 247.
That the Silmaril caused evil as well in Fëanor's heart.
No, in the same way that the Eucharist can cause evil in a Satanist's heart.
So
it's a loathing of true goodness and wanting to harness power. And so it's not the thing. I've never made the case that the Silmaril itself is evil. I hope I haven't. At least I'm not making the case now. That much I know. I'm not making the case now. But that it has the effect on people because there is so much power within it that it can turn people for good. It can turn people for bad.
Is it kind of like it didn't? Go ahead, Greg.
Well, I just think that last line in 247 supports my case more so. It says, "Ever its light grew greater as they drew into the west," which to me says that it's like responding to the proximity of the Valar, who are the ones giving the blessing. It's not like innate in the Silmarils. It's
not like
it's like magnifying the power of the Valar. Anyway,
but then it goes on to say,
I don't think people like when we talk about
magnifying glass.
No, people love it. People love it. They want spice. They want a little bit of picante. They want a little bit of cayenne pepper in there. They don't just want mac and cheese.
Uh-huh.
Imagine if the Silmaril was an entire Bitcoin, Dan. Do you think it would bring good or evil out of people?
Both.
If you're wearing a Bitcoin on your forehead,
it would bring both.
Interesting. It's like
I am wearing a Bitcoin T-shirt today. Is that subliminal that you saw that and now you're talking about?
No, every time I see you, I think about Bitcoin.
Yeah,
it is. People have said, Dan, you look like a Bitcoin.
Oh, here's an interesting thing. Top of 247, we have another very briefly mentioned slaying of elf by elf.
Yeah, briefly.
But it's the cruelest of the slayings.
Yeah.
Is that orchestrated by Maedhros?
Wait, who?
Maedhros.
And who?
And Maglor?
No, but they are... I think they're the ones that slew someone, some one elf. Later on, just a few lines down.
Causing trouble.
But Maedhros and Maglor won the day.
I think
So
it's
they
just
alone
saying
remain.
that Maedhros and
Oh,
Maglor
Amrod.
and the two other brothers.
Amrod and Amras were slain. Maedhros and Maglor. No?
So the four remaining sons of Fëanor slew tons of this group of elves. So the elves that
So sad.
Eärendil and Elwing
So-
are part of, these are the remnants of Gondolin who fled, and the remnants of Doriath who fled. So it's kind of like the last people remaining of the great kingdoms, and so it doesn't mention specific names of people who died except for Amrod and Amras, but it sounds like it was just the bloodiest and most deadly kinslaying.
Because Maedhros was a good guy, I thought, because he was rescued. Remember when he was rescued?
Yeah, I think he's kind of gone back and forth. He's flip-flopped. And I think this, because here's what I remember of Maedhros. He was saved by his bud, and then he decided to set up his people closest to Morgoth so that he would be the first line of defense if Morgoth ever attacked. And he's done some good things, but it's just that's the strength of the Oath of Fëanor.
Yeah.
And even here it says that when he learned that Eärendil was alive, he was glad to hear that, and he repented of his deeds. But then over time, the oath wore on him, and he decided to go and kill everybody.
Yeah, the knowledge of their oath unfulfilled returned to torment him and his brothers. Oh man.
Yeah.
Was he turned by Morgoth's influence, or what was he turned by?
It's the oath. It's the doom of Maedhros. The oath to pursue anyone who'd keep the Silmarils out of their hands. Like, put the Silmarils above everything else. All friendships. All
Yeah. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but it said kind of something like, I think when you read, or maybe I'm jumping back to the previous chapter, it said that this person who would speak on behalf of both elves and men, that this couldn't happen until the Oath of Fëanor found its end and the sons of Fëanor relinquished the Silmarils. So it's interesting because that hasn't happened yet. They haven't relinquished the Silmarils yet.
Whoa. What page is that?
That's 244. The bottom of 244.
Okay, wait. I'm remembering somebody got caught by Morgoth and got turned into a thrall. That's not Maedhros, was it?
No.
He did get he was captured, right?
He was captured.
But he wasn't enthralled.
No.
Okay.
That's interesting.
So, do you wait, Dan? Did you hear what I was saying about that though?
No, I didn't.
The oath that in that previous chapter.
I heard about the oath. Yeah.
It said the oath needs to be broken by the sons of Fëanor relinquishing the Silmarils. That needs to happen before the power of the Valar would be moved, So it's interesting because we read that Eärendil makes it to Valinor, but the Silmarils are still in the possession of Morgoth and of Elwing. So that part hasn't been fulfilled, where the sons of Fëanor, like the oath of Fëanor, still stands, and these two remaining sons of Fëanor are still pursuing the Silmarils.
To be super clear, the oath of Fëanor is the doom of Maedhros.
Yes,
they're synonymous.
Well, the doom of Maedhros is like the banishment of them. It's their oath says that they would not return.
Yeah, it's like a curse.
They'd be cursed if they call this curse upon themselves.
Yeah. So really, it needs to have a fulfillment in order to be relinquished from their bloodline.
One other interesting thing here I thought was this is kind of in the bottom third of 248, that when Eärendil comes, when they land on the shores, they he goes up by himself to Tirion, and he finds it empty because the people, the elves there, are all over in Valmar, like in
Having
a
party.
feast, in a great feast.
Yeah.
And it says, just as Morgoth and Ungoliant came in ages past, in a time where Tirion was empty because there was a great feast. I love that kind of parallel there, that there is this kind of like,
Yeah.
this redemption happens in a similar way to the original destruction.
Although, interestingly, when Morgoth and Ungoliant did it, they did it by design. But now
Right.
Eärendil's doing it. He doesn't know why they're not there.
Right.
It's happen chance, and instead of gloating, it brings about sorrow and despair.
There definitely is like this solemn tone here when he arrives in Tirion, and it's empty, and he fears that there's been some kind of evil that has befallen them, and just
But we have
silence. Can you imagine this? Just like, yeah, it reminds me of your favorite movie, Dan. 28 Days Later, when Cillian Murphy's like walking through London and it's just empty. It's just totally empty.
Yeah, but that didn't end good. Like there was no one to bring the gospel. But in this case, we have Eomwe, who does call out like some good news, like, "Hey, beautiful dude, handsome man, come hither."
That's exactly how it says it.
That was Tolkien's first draft. He's like, I'm going to rewrite this, but I'll just put this in for now. Okay. So what it was saying on 244 earlier seems to be about overcoming the curse, the doom of Mandos. Like that won't be done unless the sons of Fëanor relinquish the Silmarils. But in 249, he's not praying for the curse to be
he's
undone. He's just praying for help.
For elves and men.
I think 244 is saying that prayer will not be answered until the oath of Fëanor is broken.
The
request of... Yeah. So I'll just read it one more time. It says, the wise have said that the hour was not yet come, and that only one speaking in person for the cause of both elves and men, pleading for pardon on their misdeeds and pity on their woes, might move the councils of the powers. And the oath of Fëanor, perhaps even Manwë could not loose, until it found its end, and the sons of Fëanor relinquished the Silmarils. So I think what I'm
saying is Ulmo asked for a lot. Eärendil asked for less. So Ulmo asked that they would be forgiven, rescued, and that the Silmarils could be won back. But Eärendil is just like, please help us. Please rescue us. So in that sense, I think Ulmo asked for too much, and he wasn't the right one to ask.
Yeah, because he can't plead on the part of elves and men, really. Eärendil can, but the second part of this sort of like chance is like, and the oath of Fëanor, perhaps even Manwë could not loose until it found its end. What is the end? Because the end isn't also Fëanor relinquishing the Silmarils. The end is until it found its end and the sons of Fëanor relinquished the Silmarils. So what's its end, and how is it different to the sons of Fëanor's relinquishing the Silmarils? Do we know, or are we like, this is where we get lost? Gregolas.
I think
I kind of want to go back to the
reference to the doom. Yeah, the doom reaching its conclusion.
Which is what?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because if it's death, then they can't relinquish the Silmarils. Well, I guess maybe they could, because if they're clutching them at death, then they're going to rot and the Silmarils drop from their hands. Maybe that's what it means.
I kind of want to read the words that Fëanor says.
Do it if you got it. Yeah.
I'll have to find it. That'll be for another time. But I think, I mean, it's kind of like, I've used this example before in the past where we've talked about Sam and Bilbo, I think, being the only ones who freely gave the ring to somebody else.
Mm.
So there's like a great power in that humility to do that. And I think the Oath of Fëanor would be like, that would be a supreme act of the Sons of Fëanor repenting of the oath if they freely gave the Silmarils, like if they freely relinquished them. But at this point, they have not done anything like that. They have killed people and they're still killing people. So I think something like that would undo the oath if they, fully repented of it by relinquishing them, or died, or the Silmarils were lost or destroyed or something, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm speculating.
No,
a bit
that kind of makes sense. Like if the Oath of Fëanor, or this curse that's upon them, one way to break it is by them being humble, by them just saying, you know what, I was wrong. The other way of them breaking it is relinquishing it, which I think is a broader interpretation, because relinquishing could be at knife point. It could also be just them selling it for, I don't know,
Bitcoin.
Yeah,
one Bitcoin.
Yeah, how many Silmarils to a Bitcoin do you think?
Probably, I don't know.
3-1 or 1-3?
I think 3 Silmarils is worth 21 million Bitcoin. Which is the number of Bitcoin in existence. So 100% to 100%.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow.
We learned a lot today.
We did leave on this cliffhanger. It says that Eärendil prayed, made this prayer, and we ended with these words, and his prayer was granted.
That's not a cliffhanger, that's a conclusion.
Oh. Okay.
How was their prayer granted? It's the end of.
Close my book.
Greg's like, all right, we're done. How was it? Okay, that's the cliffhanger. Okay, I'm just a simple man. I hear his prayer is granted. I don't need. Let's move on to the next story.
Dan's done with the podcast. Yeah.
End of the book. Let's move on to the Aklalabet.
I heard a rumor that the guys doing Before the Fellowship stopped. Is that true?
It's true.
What do you mean
yeah.
they stopped?
They stopped, but it's pretty good. It's pretty accessible because they have no idea what they're talking about, so you'll fit right in. Thanks, Nate. I think I'm supposed to wrap up here. I'm sorry. That's me.
Dan loves awkward silence.
I do. If you like what you hear, go ahead and rate us 3 Silmarils out of 3. Follow us everywhere at Before the Fellowship. Join the discussion on Discord. And send any comments or questions to beforethefellowship@gmail.com. Join us next week as we read the greatest story you've never heard. The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien.
That was the worst read ever heard.
We just missed so much good content.
That was just for us to enjoy.
Yeah.
How do we do this again?
Humble thyself in the sight of the Lord.
Humble thyself.
Humble thyself.
All
I don't
right.
even know if it's like in time since there's probably a little delay.
Yeah, there's probably a bit of a. But how do we do this again? What do I start saying?
There's that red text at the top above.
I don't
the
see
Google.
any red
Before the
text.
fellowship.
It says before the fellowship was the greatest
I'm
story you've ever
Dan.
heard.
Wait, is that really red?
Yeah.
I thought it this whole
Oh,
time.
Greg.
I thought it was green.
I forgot you're colorblind. I'm sorry.
You should have
All
wrote it
this
in
time.
Braille. What were you thinking? You should have wrote it in Braille. Then
Is
you
it?
would read it.
I know you're messing with me, aren't you?
No, I'm
it
not
is green.
messing with you this time. I'm so sorry. It is
Oh.
red. It is actually
Okay.
red. And I can't believe I did that to you for this whole 2 years.
Okay, so I don't read episode 64. Eärendil sets out for Van. Okay.
When it turns red.
All right. When I finish with it, it will be red.